Well, Pat, obviously a big day announcing Paulo Nagamura as the next coach. As I looked up there on the podium, you did seem very relieved. You also seem very excited.
Yeah, I was, and on both fronts. I mean, it's a long process. You speak to a lot of people, and you and I had gone into this a little bit last week, I believe, was you really get an understanding. The more people you speak to, you get a really clear picture of exactly what you're looking for. And so part of this whole process, I think, is timing. And Paulo came at the exact time when we're like, this is the type of profile we need. And someone asked in the press conference, I'm not sure who it was, but it was a good question, saying like, when did you know? And realistically, it was after the first phone call with him. I know Asher Mendelson had spoken to him a little bit one-on-one. You know, Nick Koba knows him pretty well from his history in the league. And then for myself, I obviously played against him and knew who he was and knew he was a competitive guy. But when I spoke to him on that Zoom call, first thing it is, I got off and I remember calling both Asher and Nick and saying, I really like this guy. This guy could be the perfect fit for what we're looking for. And from there, you know, he just continued to impress as we moved along the process.
All right. With your soccer operations staff, which you just said, Nick Koba, Asher Mendelson now, and of course the head coach, Paulo Nagamura, this is kind of the example of collaboration that you've mentioned to the fan base.
Yeah, and I would add Paul Caffrey into it as a head of performance here. So it's kind of the five of us. That's the way I'm seeing it at this point in time. I could see us adding another one depending how things go. But at the end of the day, I think it's important that we all have our say in where we go. Listen, in the end, I'm the decision maker. I'll make the final call. But the last thing I want to do is just, unilaterally make decisions in this club. I don't think that's how you bring a group around, change culture. That's a dictatorship. And it's certainly never anything that I've seen be successful in our league. I think the best ones, even Dominic Kinnear, for example, who did at times rule with an iron fist, he still would grab the older guys once in a while, pull them aside, ask their opinions, get his staff to talk to the other players, and he knew how to do it. He knew how to use everybody, and it was a collaborative affair with him as well. So I think those are the type of coaches, those are the type of environments that where you can be successful.
Does Paulo understand the year? I mean, are you able to understand the years of consistently not succeeding and not being relevant here? That's the only thing from the outside I look in, and sometimes even the national media doesn't understand how beaten down the fans have been and how beaten down, and I'm trying to be very respectful here, this is, because in order to go forward, you got to know where you are.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably one of the reasons why I got the job. Because I followed the team, I left, and my heart was broken when I left. I wanted to stay. I wanted to find a position in the organization. This is no knock on Chris Canetti. I think Chris wanted to find something for me, but that was back in the day where that just didn't happen. You know, players finished their careers and then they had to go find work somewhere else. And very few continued in the game too. So I think that's changing, and I want to continue to make that change here and try to embrace ex-players and stuff within our club. So that's one thing. But I always followed the club. I always looked them and saw where they were at. When Matt Jordan was hired, Chris had reached out to Columbus and asked to speak to me. So I'd always had one eye on them and just kind of how they were. And of course, it still kind of hurt me. It was my club. It was a club that I felt I play along with, the Brian Mullins, Craig Weibels, Brian Chings, Dwayne DeRosario, a lot of guys helped build to become a strong team, but I felt a part of that group. And so I think I have a good idea. Does Paulo have that same attachment? Of course not. But the one thing he does remember, because he played at Chivas, he played at Kansas City, is he remembers the competitiveness of our group. And he knew what it was like to play our group. He knew how difficult it was, especially when it came to Houston. And he's one of his things he kept asking is like, what happened? Like, what happened to that group? Like, it just doesn't have that same feel. So I think he understands it. I don't think he's as close to it as obviously I am. But at the end of the day, to your point, I 100% agree with you. If you don't understand your history and you don't understand what's happened to this club, it is difficult to move forward. And the one thing I was impressed with, because he wasn't prompted, this was I actually didn't jump in until maybe about 45 minutes before the press conference, and I was more writing about kind of my introduction, making sure I got the points I wanted to get across. So I didn't really talk to Paulo much before, but I liked how he talked. He talked about turning this thing around and getting back to the way when it was a difficult place to play. So to me, he understands the history of it. He hasn't lived it, but at the end of the day, for him having that understanding without being prompted, without us really talking about it in detail, is good. But that's one of the reasons that attracted me to him. He gets it. He understands. He realizes where we're at as a club, and he wants to make this thing better. And he's excited about the project.
Talking to Pat Onstad, general manager, Houston Dynamo. Paulo Nagamura has been named the head coach, as we obviously know. And before we get into him a little bit more, let's just go back to something you just said a second ago about, changing that culture and that identity. And that's something you're going to want also with the front office. I mean, you come from the Columbus Crew, where it's a very tight-knit group. Sporting Kansas City, the front office is very in tune with the competitive side of the thing. How is that going to change? Who's going to initiate a lot of that change? Because you can't do everything. I'm assuming John Walker will have a big piece in that. But how do you interface all this? Because, and that's before we even begin to talk about the Houston soccer community. It's a lot of pieces that got to come together. It can't happen all at once.
No, I agree.
Mesh the business and the competitive side.
I agree with you. I mean, first and foremost, and this is the reality. The reality is that we're in two separate areas, separated by about 12 to 15 miles. So right off the bat, you're up against it to a certain extent. One thing I'm starting to be able to do now is I'm starting to get in the office. I was in the office today. I had a meeting with John in his office. So I'm physically down there. So there's a physical presence from our group here down there. And I think one of your points, I think where you're getting to with this question a little bit is, hiring of a technical director, which will help here in this building, HSP, but that frees me up now to go down there. So Asher Mendelson, who's been hired as a technical director, a guy I worked with in Columbus for 5 years, has worked in the league in various projects, most recently pretty much running MLS Next and getting that off the ground. So he's a guy I really trust, and a guy that's a really great thinker, Brown educated. He's the smart one in the room. So it's nice to have him, but he's the guy hopefully that will free me up to be able to start making that connection with the front office, so we can actually kind of join forces and start moving in the same direction. And a lot of it is communication. I think, any successful organization at any level, whether it's Apple, IBM, or, well, maybe IBM is a bad example at this same age, but a good that's showing my age a little bit. But these organizations, Tesla, whatever, it's all about communication. And if you're not communicating, and to me, it needs to be physical as well. You need to be in a room and speaking to one another. So that's something we need to improve in our club to be able to improve our culture. So I need to be able to share, hey, this is what we're doing here at HSP. This is let's see what we're doing down the office. And I may be completely, I don't know what's going on down there, so I'm trying to learn. John's educating today. We had a great conversation for an hour, and he's educating me on what's been happening there down in that building. So we're trying to become, as we say, one club, but it's difficult when you're that separate. So you've got to make an effort to bring people together. And I think that's what both John and I want to do. And I think, bringing in an Asher Mendelson, giving Nick Koba a little more leeway to do a little more work, asking Paul Caffrey to pull up his sleeves, getting Paulo involved. I think that helps free up my time to kind of now help John as well, and vice versa for John to help me. So I think that's a part of it. Now, you said the community, that's a totally different discussion and probably a different show, but you're 100% correct. I think there are a ton of bridges that need to be mended. And if not even mended, just even started to get built, I think, in some areas. But it is a work in progress. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. I would love to say, like, tomorrow, snap my fingers and everything's perfect for us, but it's not. We're going to have to work at it, and it's going to take time. And I think the biggest thing is we have to be open to criticism and to listen to it, and then try to use that to drive our culture and our beliefs and how we want to interact with the soccer community in Houston. And that's so important. I mean, it's an enormous task, but I think it's something that I'm really excited about the challenge.
Pat Onstad, Dynamo general manager, joining us. I want to go back to something you just said about ex-players, because Eddie Robinson has done some coaching on the Dash side, also in the academy in the past. Corey Ash is doing some great work on the women's NWSL side with the Dash. Right down the street from you guys is a place and a building that was refurbished by a guy named Alex Woods. His number 2 man right up near the top is a guy you know very well. His name is Wade Barrett. He was the captain of the Houston Dynamo. So this building is literally 2 blocks away. Is this the kind of thing you're talking about, going over there, talking to these guys and establishing some kind of relationship? Because you win on twofold. You got Wade Barrett there, and you've also got a kid who grew up in Houston playing, went on to play, college soccer, went on to the pros, and Alex Woods
Yep.
was on the Dallas roster as well.
Yeah, and I haven't met him before, but Wade spoke very highly of him and enjoys working with him. And they've built up a really good business there. And I think, they went through a little bit of tough times through COVID, but they've turned it around and done a fantastic job. So Wade and I have touched base a couple of times since I've been here, but not as much as I would have liked. He was, for those who were Dynamo fans, we were roommates on the road. He still calls me roomie to this day. I don't think he's used my first name and since we started rooming together on the road. So
you'll respond to
great.
Roomie if I call you Roomie?
Yeah, well, maybe not from
I won't
you,
do
but
that.
from
You're
Wade,
Dynamo general
from
manager.
Wade, Wade, no problem. Right away, I know it's Wade, and he's just a fantastic individual, as everyone knows here, and he put a lot into this club and into the soccer in the city. Still does. So he's a guy definitely, and that's what. No, it's not even low hanging fruit. I think he's already served the fruit up for me. So I'm excited.
That's to me is creating a culture also, though, right?
Yeah.
Like we've let so many good guys go, right? Like yourself in the beginning, like Craig Weibel. I mean, we could go on and on from current players, but then you can go to all the kids that grew up here and went into MLS. So a guy like Eric Quill, it pains me to see him being an assistant coach in Columbus when I know he should be a part of the Houston Dynamo, right?
Yeah.
Josh Gardner has been at Sporting Kansas City coaching kids in the community. Aren't these the kind of guys also that you want with Houston roots that have been here grew up here? Do you want them to be a part of it?
I think you want to bring as many as you can in, but you also want to bring in good people without a doubt. And
got to be qualified. No gimmies. No gimmies.
And I do think, listen, those guys are examples of guys that are already doing it in other clubs, right? But I do find at times you talk to ex-pros, and some of them are like, "Oh yeah, I think this would be a fantastic. I could do that. Yeah, I could be the GM." I'm like, "Okay, but what have you been doing since?" "Oh, I've been out for a couple of runs and playing some golf." I go, "Well, how does that qualify you to be a general manager?" So I do think you have to be careful. The examples you're using are perfect examples. These are guys, Alex who's gone and started his own successful business. Josh Gardner who's working and he's been coaching now for. Gosh, I can't believe he's retired that long, probably over 10 years now. So there's a lot of guys, Corey Ash, who's now in our club, which is great, who's gone and done some work and stuff. So there are people out there that definitely have done it and done the work and done the groundwork who deserve an opportunity. And that's when jobs open up, that's what we should be looking at. And I know we've just done a diversity hire with the league, which is an excellent program and an excellent way to try to give opportunities to people that aren't getting the opportunities they deserve. I think it should almost be the same way for us at the club, and it's something we should discuss and talk about. But can you have that almost same policy in place when you're trying to hire? Hey, listen, if we have a job open here, we should at least interview one ex-player for that job and try to see what we can do. So all those doesn't mean you're going to hire the person because maybe they're not the most qualified, but at least if you're reaching out and giving them opportunity, it may be, hey, you know what, Josh, we have a U17 position open, but he might be better served getting into community relations or something like that as you go through the interview process. So a lot of it is about opportunity. And the other thing for me that I think we've really missed, and the whole league has, for example, is just not helping players before they retire. I think these programs of going out and saying, okay, where do you want to go? How do you want to do it? Outside of coaching, which is almost every player wants to be a coach. But that outside of that, no one has really ever helped these guys, these players get prepared for life after soccer. Like I had no idea how to get into the general manager business. It was kind of through in my lap. It was more about coaching. But at that stage, I knew when in my coaching career, like I needed a change and it worked out perfect for me. But I'm lucky. The timing was right and right place at the right time. And is there a possibility that you can sit there and as a player's winding down, he has a program or something that he can go say, okay, listen, I still want to stay in the game. What are the jobs available? What are the areas? Let me see what it looks like. And then at least that person can say, you know what, I'm gonna once a week, I'm gonna go spend 2 hours in the front office in ticket sales. I want to be a salesman. Okay, I'm gonna try it. You might say it's not for him, but at least you find out rather than retiring, and then now you're scrambling for a paycheck to try to make ends meet. And what happens is guys all of a sudden just fall out of the game because they need a job and they find the first job they can get.
Pat Onstad, Dynamo general manager, joining us here. And yeah, I just think that's an element that's, as a longtime Houstonian, we do need more Houston-based people involved too, because if we're truly trying to create that new culture and extend the olive branch, we have to definitely think about that. All right, Pat, let's get into some competitive stuff. Okay, there's an awful lot of chatter from Dynamo fans about Mauro Manotas. Is there a real interest in bringing him back?
It'd be a nice one to have, wouldn't it? But I listen. I don't want to go talk about players and stuff that are under contract with other teams. He's obviously was a great player when he was here and got sold for a good chunk of change, and rightfully so. So he's someone that, listen, we're not particular in terms of where they come from. We just want to make sure they're guys that fit our system, a guy that's going to buy into the culture that we want to have in this club, and a guy that's going to respond with Paulo's coaching. So at this stage, I don't want to comment on a player that's under contract with another club.
No problem. The only thing is he's been putting out a lot of cryptic messages, so
I'm sure he has. Good for Mauro.
I had to ask that question. All right, so take us through kind of the roster now, where you see it, and what kind of changes you're going to try to make, and kind of the structure of how you're going to do that. Because Paulo has told us about a big DP sign. You want to get some other things in order, it seems.
Yeah, no. I think the next step. I think we have gotten order. I think our plan in the off season was to go get a new goalkeeper. We got Steve Clark. We wanted to get a center back that we felt could push our starting two in Teenage and Tim. We think we did that with Daniel Stairs. We're happy with that. We wanted to just get a little bit more cap space, a little bit of room. Unfortunately for Ari, we moved him out. But at the end of the day, for Ari too, Miami was a team that came after him. We didn't shop him. They actually came after him. So when that happens, I always think it's kind of a win-win for both teams. I think Ari is excited. He's got an opportunity to go perform with a coach that is looking forward to working with him. So we've made some moves. I think there's still a few more roster moves to make in terms of whether it's trades, that sort of thing, some manipulation within the league. But having said that, with our cap that we inherited and where we're at is ironically to try to get those top end guys. It's better now to go for after DPs or YPS or youth player slots, or YPS is youth player slots, because youth player slots, for example, while you could spend whatever you want your transfer fee to be on with these kids, they're limited to their salary and their cap hit is only $200,000. So it's a great initiative that the league has brought in and has helped us certainly control our cap. But I think those are the type of players that we need to get a couple of those guys, and then we still have space for a major DP or two, depending how we go. I don't know if we get two in the first window, but we certainly want to get one, and I think it's pretty clear what spot we're looking at. I think if you look at our roster and throw it up on the board, it's we're kind of missing a guy up top. So that's certainly where our target is before the season starts. We definitely, at worst case scenarios, we need to get a 9 that we feel can score in our league and be successful.
Pat Onstad, Dynamo general manager, joining us. Pat, thanks for volleying all this stuff back. This is great information for everybody. And in a prior interview that you and I did, you talked about a center forward, talked about some additional midfield players, maybe one that can take your midfield to another level.
Yeah. I think there's a couple ways to look at it. One is that's why Paul is coming in. So I have a vision of what I saw in the midfield. He has a little bit different vision than what I have, which in the end, okay, great. I want to provide him with a player that's going to fit his system. There's no point in me saying, hey, we're jamming in this guy because this is the guy's the best guy. I think he's great. And he goes, that doesn't fit in the way I want to play. So that's one of the reasons we put the brakes on a little bit. But I wouldn't say we stopped. What we've done is we've kind of teed up different positions and different profiles for positions with agents and whatnot. And at this stage now our focus is on the 9. I'm not going to try to beat around the bush. That's our number one focus right now. We need to try to get that over the line as quick as possible to get that player in and get him acclimatized to our system, to our club, to our city. That's important. So if we can do that in the next few weeks, I'm hoping at the absolute latest, the end of January, it's still going to give him a nice leeway of about 3.5, 4 weeks leading into the season. That would be the hope, depending on permit issues. But that would be the hope to get this guy in market then, and then in which case he should be able to be ready to go when the season starts. That's one. And then two, like you said, essential midfield. I think Paulo and I see it fairly similarly, but we do have a few tweaks. So we may have to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit in terms of not every guy that I probably had in my ranking are necessarily going to be his top guys, but some of the guys I said, I like them, but I don't think they're what I'm looking for. He's actually gone, oh, I kind of like those guys. And I'm like, oh, okay, I liked them too. But now that you describe it, yeah, they fit better than this guy. So it's a work in progress, but it's something, like I said, where these aren't guys that we're trying to pick off of a waiver wire in the league. These are guys that we've got to go out and make sure we do our due diligence. Some of the forwards, for example, I've flown into a few countries already when I started back in November and in December, and gone and met with some players and face to face, just to make sure that these are the guys that want to be here. That's I'm sure most GMs will tell you, until you meet them face to face and look them in the eye. Sometimes, and I've done that with Columbus as a technical director, and gone and met some players and realized this guy has no interest really in coming here. He just thinks it's a payday. And then in which case you scratch him off. But then when you meet a guy and and you have it's almost kind of like it was with Paulo in terms of your first meeting. Within the first 10 minutes, you're like, okay, this guy's all in. And we have some guys like those are the type of players that we want here. That want to be in Houston, want to be in MLS, want to turn this team around, want to be part of this project. So that's what we're looking for, and I think we're well on our way. We're pretty excited about it.
Pat, how do you feel about the wide game, the wide areas of your team, which obviously, as we all know, is so important in the modern game?
Yeah, I mean, Fafa had a fantastic year. If he does that again, that would be terrific. And if he does that again, then I'm sure his agent will come knocking and we'll start talking. So we're going to have to, if he can do it again. And that would be great. And I think he's the type of guy that has that mindset, that he's got a chip on his shoulder. He wants to prove to people that he can do it again. And we're excited about the way he plays. He presses, he works hard. That's what Paulo wants. That's what I want, is a guy that's going to put the work in for the group, but at the same token, can still score goals. Corey Baird obviously came in and unfortunately got off to a terrible start here, just on a physical standpoint, got injured right off the bat and never really got going. He's a guy that's had success in our league. Is he an upper echelon technical guy? No, but is he a guy that works hard and gets in the box from his grit and his work rate? Absolutely. He's a successful guy. I think we could get deeper in wide guys. Yeah. Griffin Dorsey is a hard worker, good guy that can help, but I think just saying those three names is good, but I think we need more. So we need to go look and try to get a few more wide guys, I think, and hopefully an upper echelon guy that'll push everybody and see where that goes. But yeah, those are the three spots. We said attacking spots, say 9, then a central midfielder, and then a wide guy as well.
And then real quick, your outside backs, is that an area you're looking at very closely? Because again,
yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm happy with where we're at. I know I'm sure there's some of the guys would have liked to have better seasons in the sense that, but we're still working on that. I think they're committed to the club. The one thing I would say about our back line, man for man, is that every one of those guys is 100% committed to the club, and you can't ask for a lot more than that. Sometimes you have guys when they're, they got one foot out the door, they're not happy here, or they're, I thought it was a great season. This is fine. I don't mind not making the playoffs, but to a man, pretty much everyone's like, listen, this has got to change. We got to get better. And I want to be part of this. This is what I want to be a part of. So we're excited. We want to give them opportunities. I'm sure some fans are probably wondering what, but at the end of the day, you have a priority and a list of guys that you have to go after, and a priority in terms of the positions that you're going after. If you just randomly start picking guys and going here and there, the next thing you know, you'll be up against the cap and you won't really be able to solve the bigger problems that you have. So I don't think there's a roster in our league that is perfect. I think everybody wants to try to tweak things, and I'm sure we're no different, whether we're winning championships or not. We'll always want to try to improve our team, and that's my job.
Exceptional stuff, Pat. Pat Onstad joining us. So when you look at this roster, and I think you said something very important, and even for me, us on the outside, we don't understand all the things that are moving in the background. You may get off this interview in a second here and have a whole nother thing to deal with that might have changed one of your answers here. Who knows? But
yeah, maybe.
But honestly, it is all moving at once. But there is a part of you guys that have to retain a certain amount of these players, and you have to have the feeling, right, you and Paulo, that you can get more out of certain people.
Yeah, I think Paulo hit it in the press conference, right? That was one of the things that is actually one of the things we talked about before going in, is saying, he said, is there anything that you should mention? I said, I think it's important to get out there and say this is a fresh start for everybody. And I do think it's important. There are players in our locker room that are unsure of where they sit and where they stand. And what I would say is Paul is very open-minded. And I think I mentioned this before, but one of the things when I talked to Peter Vermees about him, I said, describe him if you could, like in one or two words. And he goes, he's collaborative. He's a guy that wants information. He's open-minded. So I think that's important for him to get that out there, to tell the players, like, listen, I'm new. I'm going to get to know you. I don't know you that well other than watching on film. And there are some players he's come in here and said, I think the way I play, I think that player I could suit my system a little bit better, and vice versa too. There's going to be guys who have had good runs here, and at times they may not fit into a system. That's the reality. So, but the nice thing is that everybody's starting on a fresh slate, and everybody's got everything to prove. So I'm hoping, the idea is you don't change coaches with the hope that, you maintain the status quo. You hope that it brings new life to the group. You hope that it can push everybody forward, and that the coach is able to get more out of as many players as possible than the last coach did. I mean, that's the whole purpose on it. And I would say with Paulo, we believe in him. He's a high potential coach in our opinion. The other thing I was going to touch on a little bit is, I think all coaches have to start somewhere, and Paulo kind of touched on that in his press conference. Greg Vanney, Jim Curtin. I'm trying to think of Peter Vermees, for example. These guys all started in the academy. These guys all started with young kids, and I touched on that a little bit. But I think it's really important. These guys have got reps before. I think if it's a guy that steps off the field as a player and then becomes a head coach, it gets tricky. That's a lot. I think our league has kind of gone away from those type of guys and learning on the job. I think those guys are few. I don't see many of those guys that happening anymore in our league.
No, I think that's why I've always been impressed with you and Craig and the guys that I got to know here in Houston, is just how quickly you guys got into the work. It probably wasn't easy to figure it all out, but you got there. I had been there at one point, and it ended up being coaching because that was really your only option. You wanted to be in soccer. So a lot of respect to you personally for all the work you've done to get to this point. So it's exciting. What's your biggest, if you look at Paulo right now, what do you think his biggest challenge will be making this step up?
For me, is to surround him with good people. And we can touch on it here a little bit. We're far down the line with a couple of coaches that we hope that will kind of be guys that will support him. That I think when people hear the name, certainly one of the names, I think people will be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But what I would say is, we also want to make sure that like one of the coaches that will work with Paulo together to hire him, but I think he has I'm trying to think of the best word to say, but he needs help supporting him, and how do we get his message across in terms of the way we want to play, how do we coach it, how do we teach it, and so for a lot of teams, what they do is they'll hire a director of methodology, so to speak, or he's essentially an assistant coach, but somebody who's got experience in saying, okay, I want to work on my wingers running behind the line. How do I train them? And there's lots of ways to do it. And a lot of coaches, and Paulo's, I'm sure he's got lots of ideas, but sometimes it doesn't get through with the group. And so then you have to go, how can I manipulate this to get through to my group? And there's some of these coaches, Nico Estevez, who's gone to Dallas, that was his strength. And one of his things was he was a director of methodology, and he would have 9 different exercises to teach the same topic, and he'd be able to, eventually you find which is the right one for your group. So if you can find a coach like that can help a young coach, a high potential young coach get that, I think that really helps. So I think that's, if you said there's one area, I think that's an area that would really help him on the training pitch. But in terms of gamesmanship and adjustments on the fly, he's got his staff is well-rounded to be able to do that, and understanding the league. I think it'll be good.
Pat Onstad joining us. Pat, we're going to wrap it up here because you've given me more than enough time, and we really thank you for that. Thanks for being so candid, by the way, because I think this is tremendous information for the fan base. I did want to not end the interview without talking about Steve Clark because he's number one. He's a great interview. He's a great goalkeeper. He's
Yeah, I
got a
heard the
little
interview.
eccentric nature
Yeah.
to him. I think he could be somebody that people really take to because of the way he plays goal and might be different than the way you did during your outstanding
Oh
career.
yeah, he and I were night and day, night and day. We often joked about it when I coached him up in Columbus. But what I would say is he is a fan. Everywhere he goes, he's a fan favorite, and part of it is just his personality. He's a loving character. He cares about his teammates. He cares about the staff. He cares about the fans. He cares about winning. He's one of the most competitive human beings. He really downplayed it in your interview. He didn't talk about it. But he's one of the most competitive human beings I've ever met in my life. Never mind a soccer player. It's phenomenal, his level of competitiveness. I mean, he'll fight you over a coffee bean, let alone anything else. So he's ready to go. But he does play the game differently in goal, and I think he's more of a modern goalkeeper than I ever would be. And I'm going to drag your time out here, but when I worked for Greg Berhalter, he wanted to play out of the back. Well, for me, I was more Houston Dynamo fans remember how far I kicked the ball than I would actually stop shots. So would punt the ball. So I never played out of the back, but Greg would come to me as I was working on that. For me, it was new. So I had to learn how to coach it. I had to watch other coaches and figure out training sessions, and wish I had my own goalkeeper director methodology to help me out with that. But figuring it out and working with Steve was great because he was so good with the ball at his feet and so calm and able to break lines with passes, which that's foreign. So Greg goes, well, Pat, what would you do if you were my goalie? What would you do? I go, Greg, and walk in and say, I love what you're doing here. It's unbelievable, but you might as well trade me now because there's no chance I can do this. So it takes a lot of courage, like for Steve, it takes a lot of courage to play that way. And you are, unfortunately, if you're playing out of the back, tell me how many center backs have given up goals when they've passed it square and it's got picked off or they got it caught in their feet. And unfortunately, the same thing will happen to goalkeepers too. But it's the ability to bounce back and do it is phenomenal. And Steve's mindset is tremendous. I mean, top to be able to do that and the way he plays the game. He's such a calming influence in the back when you're under pressure as a center back, knowing you always have an outlet and that will still keep the ball for you. It's phenomenal. So I'm excited to get him in here. I think for us in our locker room, he'll be a much needed boost of adrenaline down in there. But I think people will gravitate towards him. He's a fantastic personality.
Pat, thanks so much for all the time. Let's let you get a break here. It's been a heck of a time for you. I know you've been moving back down here, scouting, you name it. You've done it. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. Thanks for being so candid too, because this is radio gold here. Your transparency. Thank you.
And I don't know any other way. I'm sorry. There's going to be times and moments of season I know are going to be hard, and we'll have the same conversation. And I hopefully you challenge me as well. You don't have to always throw me a softball, but at the end of the day, it's who I am. I think maybe to a fault at times, probably a little too open at times, but I just believe in that transparency. And I think, and I'll go back to it again. You want to work together with people if they don't know what you're thinking. And that includes the fans, that includes the media. If they don't have an idea of what you're thinking, it makes it difficult. So, when I say things, I want people, I know it's what I believe in. And if I don't attain that, I want people to hold me accountable. Otherwise, I don't think we grow.
I think it's what the doctor ordered down here, Pat. You're the perfect guy for it. Thank you so much for coming on.
All right, Glenn. Thank you.
All right. That's Dynamo General Manager Pat Onstad.